There are things that people ought to know, everybody ought to know things that are represented by this particular chart. It has some value. It's created by people who are trying to sell you things, but nonetheless, these are a 200-pound person who falls. If you fall 4 feet, that means that you're going to, well, if you fall a foot, that means you're going to experience double the weight that you actually are when you actually impact. So if you fall 4 feet, it's 1,800 pounds or 1,600 pounds that you're going to actually impact the floor with. If you fall 30 feet, you're actually going to experience almost 20,000 pounds of force when your body hits. So, and that's only at 38 miles per hour. So, when you're running in a car and the car strikes something, at 55, you're also going to experience more forces than that. But of course, it depends upon how far you go, where your impact is, and how far the bumper distance is. What the crushing zone is, to determine exactly how much force you're going to apply. So in other words, to play with yourself and to think that I can jump off of this, or I can do that, means there's going to be some consequences to that. This is a reality. Force has a consequence. Pressure has a consequence. You might not even think of yourself, but think of your parent, for instance, who has to pay for the medical bill, which is, enormous. I have a small broken bone in my right leg, the little one, and I was charged $66,000. Are you prepared to tell your parent that you broke the little bone in your lower leg, and now they had to pay $66,000? And it didn't stop there. They wanted more. I said, "This is the end. We're not going to do more." But not everybody can do that. So the end result is that you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You have to understand that there are consequences. You don't just get to believe whatever you want to believe. And that brings us to belief itself, which is to accept the idea that I know what I know. And while there is some value to the idea that I know what I know, the end result is that you have to let truth decide. Because if you know something that is not true, then you don't know what is true. So belief is like putting a dog in a cage. And you put him in the cage, and he's locked in the cage, and if he's used to that, if he grew up with that, he believes that he's safe in the cage because nothing can get me in here. And of course, that's what belief is about, is so that you can decide that you are safe here. This is your safe zone. This is your safe belief. You can believe that eternity is going to be however you want it to be, and that becomes your safe zone. Nobody can get me here because I'm not going to let anybody influence me about what I believe. And of course, if you actually pull people out of their little cage, their little prison, and make them see the evidence that this may not be true for you, they will hate you for it, because now they're not safe anymore. And if you actually use truth in that, they will not feel safe anymore, even though they climb back in there, because the door won't shut. So never actually, don't confront people with their beliefs. They need their beliefs. They use their beliefs. They live within the beliefs. Let them believe what they want. But you also believe what you want, whatever that is, as well. And you should not be fighting with them, and they should not be fighting with you about what you believe. It is whatever it is, because it's you. You chose this. This is yours. And that's, of course, the element of belief that everybody wants. And then, of course, you don't believe unless you fear. Because you fear, you need some sort of belief to protect you. So what you fear is very important. And of course, then people will say, oh, I don't need to do any of this, and they'll go ahead and do something that's absolutely stupid and wrong, and then they learn that there are consequences to what they do, and so then they find obedience to try to keep from doing the wrong thing again. And that's why they search for leaders. You know, leader's supposed to keep me out of trouble, and if he doesn't keep me out of trouble, then of course I can blame him. It's all your fault. It's not my fault. It's all your fault. So that's primary realities of human life. But it also intervenes with the whole idea of an inner voice. Some people say you should listen to your inner voice. Well, it ain't so. The truth of the matter is that there is just you, and you don't have an inner voice. What you do have, however, is what people and books and movies and television and this person and that person and the other person all tell you about what you ought to believe. And those things which describe what other people believe for you, what other people believe for themselves, becomes your inner voice. Those are the things that when you have a slight idea that I don't know what to choose, your inner voice, these are the things that people have told you to believe, comes involved with that, and then they try, that voice tries to entertain you, tries to influence you, tries to tell you what to do, and it includes all the lies that everybody in history have ever thought or taught or believed or whatever. Just because it's in a book or something doesn't make it true, or doesn't make it false. It just doesn't. Truth is truth, and it is what it is, and that's all it is. It is not more than that. So, you have to understand that you have to pick and sort your way through all that, or more clearly, if you want to be stable, if you want to be yourself, you must define what is true for you. And that means that you actually have to investigate and search for the evidence that is something that you can depend upon, something real, something proven to be, this is what happens each and every time. So that end result is that you can now depend upon this to be true, so that you can then build your life upon the anchors that are in fact true. And if you have no anchors, then whatever you believe is whatever you believe, and if somebody influences you otherwise, then you'll just move to the other side, and so on and so forth. So it's important for you to understand what is true. That's just how it is. And it's important for you to acknowledge that that in this world we can only do what we can do. That's all there is. There is no more. We can only do what we can do. You can't give somebody else what doesn't belong to you. It's not yours to give. So you have to accept the idea that some people can do more than you, some people can do less than you, but the end result is we can each only do what we can do, and we have to choose what is true for us. If you give away what belongs to somebody else, you stole it. It wasn't yours to give. So you can't really do that. And the cost of that will become evident as time goes by. But the end result is you got to be real. And of course, in this United States, in particular in this day, there is nothing real about 90% of it. The universities live in fantasy, they live in delusions, they live in imaginations. There are no consequences for us. We can play God. Well, they can't play God. They never could play God, and they don't do anything that presents the evidence that they could in the future play God. They can only destroy what we have to depend upon. And of course, if we look at what they're doing, we can depend upon nature, and of course they're injecting chaos and creating all kinds of chaos in nature because they believe in evolution. That's their cage. That's their lie that they assume will protect them. But the end result is, of course, that evolution is for fools. There's just no other way to say it. There's just for fools, and that's because if you don't have a mouth, you can't eat. If you don't know you should eat, you can't eat. If you don't have a throat to pass food down, you can't eat. If you don't have a pancreas to create the chemicals that dissolve the food, you don't eat. If you don't have intestines and so forth, you don't get to live. And you need it all at the same time. You can't build it one piece at a time, and it's certainly no accident. Evolution is for liars and liars. That's all there is to it. But unfortunately, believers believe whatever they want to believe. That goes true for religion. That's certainly true for university, which is a cult. Just believe the leader knows what he's doing. Just follow us. Just believe. And of course, they've been able to take you down the path of ruin because they were able to make some changes along the way. But of course, then they didn't allow for what changes cost. Because when you change something, that costs something to something else. You can't change something without changing something else. That's the facts of life. So, you need to understand that we have to make choices, and you need to understand that if we make choices based upon what we want, we just basically lie to ourselves and create things that will not sustain a future, as is the current case. It's not a sustainable way of life in any form or fashion. So they have led you to the path that is hell, actually. They've dumped poisons on top of the water supply and everything else, and there's nothing sustainable about this world, and that means that they're killing off every child. And the end result is that, of course, the university has managed to lead. They influence every decision. They're the experts. They have instructed and educated everybody that makes a decision. All the leaders have a diploma, so we're going to give them the credit that they chose to lead you to hell. That's just how it is. But the end result is, of course, you have to stop following them in order to survive. You have to stop following them in order to survive. So, the lesson of the day is stop, investigate what is or is not true, and begin again with what is true. That would be the lesson of the day. So and that's true for you as well. If you believe or if you do something that has no value, it's not sustainable, it's not going to work. If you jump off a building saying, I can fly, and find out you can't fly, there's a cost to that. There's a consequence to that. It's not going to work out the way you hope. And of course, then there are people who believe that there are people who commit suicide because they let the things that other people say influence them to believe that they can just go ahead and die with no consequences. That's not true either. There are consequences to dying. You die with your truth. And if your truth is nothing but a lie, you die with your lies. And that will not survive in eternity. Only truth survives in eternity. How is that not true? Only truth will survive in eternity. You don't get a choice. Time allows us to make choices that have consequences that we can then decide and learn from. But beyond the stopgap measure of time, which allows you the space to learn from your mistakes, is the truth of what real force and real energy and real consequences are, and those don't allow for lies. So we have to accept the idea that there's a decision to be made here, there's a truth to be sorted here, there's a living to be known. And of course you can say, and it is true, that life is a great thing. Life has value, and life is all kinds of things that we want. But on the other side of that is if you lose hope, you have to have hope. But if you lose hope, then you wake up in the morning and say, life is going to force me to eat, or life is going to force me to do this or that I don't want to do. And the end result of that is, if I don't do that, then I'm going to die, so life is just punishing me. And of course, that makes life a lot less valuable. So it's very important to decide what hope is. You have to have hope. You have to believe that if you look out and see that life is headed the wrong way, you can either commit suicide, so don't do that, or you can fight for life and world and a truth that will survive, which is absolutely necessary. The future depends upon what we do today. The future depends upon the decisions you make today. You are responsible for the things that you are. You are responsible for your truth.